Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. Continuing on with NFL Week 5. Got a good one here. Buffalo on the road in Houston. Let's do it.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
All right, so like I said, we got the Bills on the road here in Houston. Texans are catching a point at home, so Houston's short home dogs. Total sitting at 47.5 pretty much across the board. Let's take a look at the pie charts, and according to this data, tickets are coming in pretty even, about 50-50 as far as the tickets go. Money coming in on Buffalo, so this is indicative of some sharp money coming in on the Bills side. But as I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So let's get into this matchup. The Bills are 3-1 against the spread in their last 4 matchups against Houston, but they're 2-4 against the spread in their last 6 trips to Houston. I'm not a big trends guy, but it's a good place to start. The under has also been cashing in this matchup. 2-8 to the under in the last 10 matchups between these two teams. 4 straight unders in Houston. So if you've been betting the under in Bills-Texans games, you are cashing out. So what do we think of how these teams match up this week? Well, Josh Allen came down to earth. Weeks 1 through 3, the Bills' passing offense, I mean, he was looking like the clear-cut MVP choice through 3 weeks, completing 75% of his passes, almost 9 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, no picks, a passer rating over 133, came crashing down hard. Baltimore really put him in a coffin. It was his worst game of the season, and it wasn't even close. And that was against the Baltimore pass defense that isn't even playing well this season. If we were talking about last year's Baltimore team, it makes sense. They were the best pass defense in the NFL. But this year, even after the Buffalo game where they played great, they're still just 21st, 20th, 16th, and 7th in these metrics. So how did Baltimore stop this Bills passing attack that looked unstoppable? Well, they took away what Joe Brady wants to do. We all know what Joe Brady wants to do with this Bills offense. He wants to run the football, chew the clock. They're 6th in run frequency, 29th in pace. If you pull up the Bills' rushing numbers on the season, they're just 24th in yards per carry. They're fine with that. They're looking for 4 or 5-yard carries, chew 35 seconds off the clock, keep the defense on the field, keep that clock rolling, set up an opportunity for Josh Allen to make a big play through the air. And in weeks 1 through 3, it was working perfectly. What did Baltimore do? They took away that 4 or 5-yard run on first down. I mean, Baltimore, as of right now, is looking like the best run defense in the NFL. First in yards per carry allowed, first in success rate against the run. So Baltimore took away that first down carry. They put the Bills' offense in situations they did not want to be in. Buffalo in the game, 23 carries, 81 yards, just 3.5 yards per carry. In the first half, Buffalo only had 3 points, just 2.54 yards per play with 0 plays of 10-plus yards. So the question becomes, can this Houston defense do the same thing? And that's a loaded question because last year, Houston was one of the best run defenses in the NFL. 2nd, 1st, 6th, and 2nd in these metrics here. This year, 24th, 21st, 21st, and 4th. 4th in run defense DVOA. That's a schedule-adjusted metric, and maybe it makes sense if you take into consideration who they've played. And also in some of these games, it's not the RB that's running on Houston. In the Colts and Bears games, DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor combined for 33 carries, just 75 yards. That's 2.27 yards per carry. Who was running on this Texans defense was the quarterbacks. Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson, 11 carries, 100 yards, over 9 yards per carry. So you might see numbers like that and think, hey, this Houston run defense is still fine. They've just seen a couple of athletic quarterbacks that were able to make plays. Okay, that's fair. But they're playing the Bills. Josh Allen, in case you've never watched him play, he's pretty athletic. He's most definitely a dual-threat quarterback. So I'm sure the Houston run defense will come around as the season progresses. They have most of the same personnel. But I don't know if this is the game with Josh Allen. He's able to make plays with his legs, too. Now, what about the Houston pass rush, though? Because Baltimore doesn't really have much of a pass rush. Josh Allen should be under pressure in this game. Houston's 6th in pressure rate, 4th in adjusted sack rate so far in the year. Buffalo's been struggling in pass protection. They're 27th in pressure rate allowed. So there's going to be pressure on Josh Allen in this game. Here's the thing. He's been pretty good about handling pressure, with the exception of turnover-worthy plays, which is crazy, 8.2%. But look at the other metrics. Passer rating, 6th. Yards per attempt, 8th. Pressure to sack rate, you could argue, is the most important one, 3rd in the NFL. So he is not taking sacks when he's pressured. When he feels that Houston pressure, he's most likely going to do exactly what Anthony Richardson and Caleb Williams did against this Texans defense. He's going to take off. And from what we've seen so far this year, it's probably going to work. Now, what about Josh Allen throwing the ball, though? I actually think the Texans are a pretty tough matchup for them. First of all, Houston's played great defense against the pass this year. Also, they run a lot of single high safety looks, 57.6%. That's 8th most in the NFL. Josh Allen has actually struggled a bit throwing the ball in single high safety looks. You can see completion percentage, yards per attempt, passer rating way down in comparison to 2 high safety looks. Another thing Houston's defense does a lot of, cover 4, 26.6% cover 4 frequency. That's a lot. That's 2nd most in the NFL. Josh Allen, not great numbers throwing the ball in cover 4 amongst 31 qualified quarterbacks. I mean, 27th, 11th, 22nd, and 31st. So what does all that data translate to? Well, the gaps may not be there for James Cook. Houston runs some coverage patterns that Josh Allen has struggled with, and Houston struggled with scrambling quarterbacks, and they're going to get pressure on him. I think we're going to see Josh Allen running the ball. He should be successful with it, so I'm not a prop guy, as you guys know, but for those of you that bet props, maybe Josh Allen over 30.5 rushing yards is worth a look. As a whole, I think the Texans' defense is going to give Buffalo some problems. Now, what about on the other side of the ball? What do we think of the matchup for the Houston offense? Well, CJ Stroud definitely not off to the start we were expecting so far this year. Amongst 35 qualified quarterbacks, he's 14th, 17th, 16th, and 29th in these categories. 29th in pressure to sack rate is a little bit of a concern. Holding on to the ball too long, taking too many sacks. If we look at the Houston offensive numbers as a whole, just disappointing. So far this season, now granted, it's only been 4 weeks, but so far this season, Houston has been a below average offense. An overall offense, 16th in yards per play, 22nd in success rate, 17th in EPA, 20th in DVOA. Their passing attack, I mean, CJ Stroud was one of the most impressive rookie quarterbacks we've ever seen last year. They add Diggs. I mean, we were expecting this to be this high-flying, explosive passing attack. It's looking pretty average across the board with these numbers. So why is that? Based on what we saw last year, why is CJ Stroud not dominating this year? Well, it's tough to say, but you can point at the lack of big plays. Last year, in terms of throwing the ball 20-plus yards or more, CJ Stroud was pretty much the best quarterback in the NFL. Second, first on pass attempts that travel 20 or more yards. This year, just hasn't been there. 23rd, 24th, 21st, 28th, 29th. So the deep pass just hasn't been there, and the entire Texans offense is suffering. So is that going to change here in this one against the Bills? I mean, the Bills have been great against the pass so far this year, and it almost doesn't even make sense because they lost their entire secondary from last year. But this is probably a top 5 pass defense. They're 2nd in the NFL in yards per pass attempt allowed, 10th in success rate, 6th in EPA, 6th in DVOA. In my opinion, last week was a bit of an outlier. In weeks 1 through 3, Buffalo had been excellent against the deep pass. In fact, on pass attempts that traveled 20 or more yards, quarterbacks against the Bills were just 1 of 9, 24 yards and a pick. Lamar Jackson was 3 of 5 on those, 68 yards and a touchdown. But Lamar Jackson hadn't really thrown the ball downfield up until that point either. I mean, in weeks 1 through 3, he was just 1 of 8, 38 yards and a pick on passes that traveled 20 or more yards. So I think that may have been a bit of John Harbaugh out-coaching McDermott. I mean, the Bills defense had been locked down on passes that traveled 20 or more yards. Lamar Jackson had been struggling to throw the ball 20 or more yards. So the last thing McDermott would be expecting would be the Ravens to come in and Lamar Jackson take shots down the field, and that's exactly what they did, and it worked. So I was thinking maybe that was a little bit of McDermott just getting out-coached and caught off guard there. Basically, the point I'm making there is I still trust this Bills pass defense, even though Lamar Jackson had a big game against them. One thing we know the Bills are going to do is run a lot of zone coverage. Over 76% zone frequency so far this year. That's 7th most in the NFL. And here's where it gets a bit confusing. Last year, CJ Stroud was arguably the best quarterback in the NFL against zone coverage. Completed over 69% of his passes, almost 9 yards per attempt, passer rating 23 points better against zone coverage. This year, that is not the case. In fact, he's been significantly better against man coverage. So I'm really not sure what to take away from that. I mean, last year he was the man against zone coverage. This year, not so much, just at 85 passer rating. And unlike Houston, who shows a lot of single high safety looks, the Bills are always in too deep. 62.3% two high safety looks, 4th most in the NFL. And CJ Stroud, much better throwing the ball on single high safety looks. So another bad split there for Stroud against this Bills defense. Not to mention, we know the Bills are going to generate some pressure in this game. I mean, Von Miller is suspended. He's not playing in this game, but this is still one of the better pass rushes in the NFL. They're 7th in pressure rate, 6th in pass rush grade, 10th in adjusted sack rate. Now, we do have to give some credit to Houston's offensive line. They've done a solid job in pass protection so far this year, but there's a couple questionables. Tunsil's questionable. Juice Scruggs is also questionable on that offensive line. So I don't know how healthy Houston is in that department. And also, this is another crazy stat. Last year, CJ Stroud was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when given a clean pocket. In fact, I believe he was second behind Brock Purdy when given a clean pocket. This year, he's not taking advantage of it. I mean, 28th in yards per attempt, 24th in passer rating, 22nd in turnover-worthy play rate when given a clean pocket. When pressured, he is making some plays, but look at the pressure to sack rate. We already talked about it. 25%. So if you get pressure on CJ Stroud, he's holding on to the ball and he's taking sacks. So even without Von Miller on the field, I still don't like this matchup for CJ Stroud. Now, what about the Texans' run game? Because we know the weakness of this Bills defense, this is dating back to last year too, stopping the run. Well, Houston hasn't really been running the ball. Just 19th in yards per carry, 28th in success rate, 30th in EPA. We started out the season so excited, right? Joe Mixon had a big game. They averaged 5.5 yards per carry, 215 yards rushing. We were all like, oh shit, look out for the Texans. They got a run game this year. Then Joe Mixon gets hurt and they haven't done shit on the ground since. Just 3.5 yards per carry, 71.7 rushing yards per game in their last 3. Now, obviously, Joe Mixon may return from injury, and that would be huge. That would certainly, you would think, improve these numbers. But a running back doesn't improve rushing numbers from 3.5 yards per carry to 5.5 yards per carry. If a team's struggling to get the run going, it's not just the back. It's the offensive line. It's the play calling. It's everything. So I'm sure Joe Mixon returning to the lineup, if he does, will help this. But still not a run game I trust at all. And by the way, it's not just Joe Mixon. I mean, Dameon Pierce is also questionable. He's missed the last couple of games. Like I mentioned earlier, a couple question marks on the offensive line, Tunsil and Scruggs. Also, Tank Dell, we don't know if he's going to be playing. So this Texans offense is pretty banged up. Now, to be fair, the Bills offense isn't in great shape either. Like I mentioned, as I'm sure you've heard, Von Miller's suspended for this game. I think Bernard's going to play. The linebacker, he's listed as questionable, but he's already participating in practice, so I think he's going to play. I think Teron Johnson's going to play. Taylor Rapp, though, he missed practice, so we saw him get banged up in the Baltimore game. I'm not sure if Taylor Rapp's going to play, and this is a secondary they're already pretty thin at in terms of depth, so a little worried about that. Still love that Bills offensive line, though, even without Von Miller. So where does that leave us in terms of placing a bet? Man, this is a tough call. I mean, I think the Bills win this game, but I also could see it going a lot of different ways. Who's to say CJ Stroud of 2023 doesn't show up, start picking apart zone coverage like he was last year? I personally don't like placing bets on things like that. Like, oh, CJ Stroud's just going to show up and throw the ball in zone coverage because he did it last year when we haven't seen him do it this year. So I lean towards the Bills side. I think the Bills win the game. The bet I actually placed was the under, but I got it at 46.5. The market moved against me, moved up to 47.5. So, I mean, obviously that would be indicative of some professional money coming in on the over. I'm not going to let it scare me off. My pick for the game is still the under at 47.5, and I lean towards the Bills winning the game. The Texans offense is going to have to show me something before I have any faith in them winning a big game like this. So I'm on the under, and I lean towards the Bills money line. If you'd like to see all the bets I currently have open, head over to KyleKirms.com and click on Open Bets. You'll see all mine as well as everyone on the staff here. Also, if you sign up to Sauce Network Plus, it comes with access to the Discord, and you can participate in the weekly betting league. $150 cash and one of these trophies go to the winner every single week. So if you're interested, head over to the website and sign up. Let's have ourselves a nice NFL Week 5. NFL's been great to me so far this season. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about college football. That's been a nightmare. Hopefully that turns around. But the NFL's been going well. Hopefully that continues. Please remember to bet responsibly. Talk to you in the Discord.